There's a rhythm to history, a rhythm that every great empire dances to before it dies. It's not invasion, it's not rebellion, it's not even war. It's the slow death of its own money. For thousands of years, empires have risen on trust and collapsed when that trust was broken. Rome, Spain, Britain, all built on currency so strong the world believed it could never fail, and yet every one of them did. Rome was the first to learn that lesson the hard way. At its height, it was the center of the known world, 60 million people, roads stretching from Britain to the deserts of Arabia, and a silver coin that tied it all together, the denarius. That coin wasn't just money, it was a promise. 4.5 grams of silver stamped with the emperor's face, accepted from the sands of Egypt to the hills of Gaul. When you held it, you held Rome's credibility in your hand. For centuries it worked, until the spending began. Empires don't fall from weakness, they fall from ambition. Every new frontier demanded soldiers, fortresses, grain shipments, gold. Rome was rich, but not that rich. So its rulers turned to an ancient illusion: create more money without creating more value. Emperor Nero was the first to cheat the system, shaving just 10% of the silver out of every coin. A small change, invisible to the naked eye but deadly to trust. What began as a clever fix turned into a centuries-long contagion. By the time of Emperor Gallienus, the silver denarius contained only a trace of the metal that once defined it. Imagine working for a wage that looked the same but bought a tenth of what it used to. Prices soared, trade collapsed. Farmers stopped selling for coins. Soldiers demanded gold or nothing at all. Rome didn't need to be conquered. It hollowed itself out from within. And when the denarius died, so did Rome's economy. Roads crumbled, armies deserted, and the empire that had once ruled continents became a memory. But here's the haunting part. Rome thought it was different, just like every empire after it. And today, in 2025, we're saying the same thing again, that our empire and our currency are immune to the pattern. Because the real question isn't how Rome fell, it's whether we've already started down the same road and just haven't realized it yet. After Rome's fall, the world waited centuries for another empire bold enough to claim destiny for itself. That empire was Spain, forged in conquest, baptized in silver. The year was 1545 when Spanish explorers found a mountain that would change history, Cerro Rico, in what is now Bolivia. It wasn't just a mine, it was a mountain made of silver. For nearly 100 years, it bled wealth into Spanish ships so fast that Europe itself began to glitter. The Spanish dollar, minted from that river of silver, became the first truly global currency. It was trusted in Asia, Africa, and the New World alike. The sun never set on the Spanish Empire, not because of divine blessing, but because its silver literally circled the earth. But like Rome before it, Spain mistook abundance for strength. The treasure ships came in faster than anyone could count, so fast that prices began to rise everywhere. When everyone holds more silver, silver itself becomes worth less. What should have made Spain rich made Europe expensive, and the empire, bloated with wealth it didn't earn, began to rot from within. Spanish kings borrowed recklessly, fighting wars on every front, against England, against the Dutch, against time itself. Instead of factories and merchants, they built palaces and fleets. Instead of investing in creation, they spent on conquest. By the late 1500s, King Philip II ruled an empire that looked unstoppable on the surface, and yet beneath it, the world's richest nation couldn't pay its own bills. Spain defaulted on its debts not once, but 4 times in less than half a century. The world's creditors turned away. The silver that had once been trusted became suspect. To survive, Spain did what every cornered empire does. It tampered with its money. Copper coins thinly plated with silver flooded the markets. Merchants laughed at them. Soldiers refused them. And soon the empire that owned the world's silver had nothing left of real value. Spain's decline wasn't a defeat on the battlefield. It was a betrayal in the mint. They had all the treasure in the world, but no trust to back it. And if you think flooding the world with cheap money ended in the 1600s, think again. Because today the United States isn't mining silver, it's printing it. The only difference is that our silver isn't metal anymore, it's digital ink, and the pattern is beginning to repeat. By the 1800s, the torch of empire had passed again, this time to an island nation whose navy ruled the oceans and whose currency ruled the world: Britain. At its height, the British Empire covered a quarter of the planet. It was said that the sun never set on it, and that wasn't poetry, it was arithmetic. Somewhere, always, a corner of the map was under the Union Jack, and behind that dominance stood a single idea: the British pound sterling, a currency so trusted that the world measured its worth by it. For 2 centuries, the pound was backed by gold. 1 pound equaled a fixed, precise amount of it. That link, unbreakable, unquestioned, was the invisible chain that tied the empire together. Gold gave the pound credibility, credibility gave Britain power, but power demands a price. Maintaining colonies, fleets, and armies across every sea cost more than even Britain could afford. When World War I erupted in 1914, that delicate balance shattered. To fight the war, Britain borrowed like never before, from its citizens, from its colonies, and from America. Its national debt exploded tenfold in just a few years. The gold reserves that once backed the pound began to drain away, quietly, dangerously. And in desperation, the government did the unthinkable. It printed money unbacked by gold. For the first time, the pound wasn't a promise of metal, it was a promise of faith. After the war, they tried to fix it. In 1925, Winston Churchill, then Chancellor of the Exchequer, restored the gold standard, but at the old pre-war rate. It was a fatal mistake. The pound was overvalued. British exports became too expensive, jobs vanished, and the economy suffocated. By 1931, the gold link was broken again, this time for good. And after World War II, the empire itself followed. Britain won the war, but lost its wealth. Its debt soared to 270% of GDP. The empire had bankrupted itself to save the world. By 1944, the pound's crown was gone. At the Bretton Woods Conference, the US dollar replaced it as the world's reserve currency. The empire that once loaned to kings was now begging the IMF for help. By the 1970s, the pound was devalued twice. Inflation hit 25%. And the empire that had ruled for centuries quietly dissolved into history. But here's the irony. The currency that replaced the pound now stands on the same cliff. The dollar inherited Britain's throne, its power, and its curse. Because if history repeats itself, the fall doesn't end with Britain, it ends with us. When the British pound surrendered its crown in 1944, there was only one empire powerful enough to take its place: the United States. The world had been shattered by war, but America stood untouched, rich in factories, oil, and gold. And at Bretton Woods, a new financial order was born. Every major currency would be tied to the US dollar, and the dollar would be tied to gold. For a time, it seemed perfect. America's dollar became the world's trust. $35 bought 1 ounce of gold, guaranteed. Nations stored dollars instead of gold, confident that the promise was as good as the metal itself. The American century had begun, but just like Rome, Spain, and Britain before it, the pattern returned. Power breeds spending, spending breeds debt, and debt demands illusions. In the 1960s, the illusion began to crack. The Vietnam War, social programs, foreign aid, America was spending far more than it earned. Other nations noticed. France, led by Charles de Gaulle, began trading dollars back for real gold. Others followed. Fort Knox's vaults started to empty. Then came the breaking point. In 1971, President Nixon closed the gold window. The dollar was no longer backed by metal, only by promise. The U.S. had just done what every collapsing empire in history had done: debased its currency. But America had one advantage: oil. Through secret deals with Saudi Arabia, the petrodollar was born. Every barrel of oil sold worldwide had to be paid for in dollars, forcing global demand for a currency no longer tied to gold. For decades, this illusion held. Then the printing began. After the 2008 financial crisis, the Federal Reserve created trillions of dollars out of nothing. Quantitative easing, they called it. The printing presses didn't stop. In 2020, during the pandemic, another $4 trillion appeared almost overnight, and like Spain's silver, it flooded the world. Inflation followed, quietly at first, then loudly. What cost $1 now cost 1.25, then 1.50. Real wages stagnated, debt ballooned past $36 trillion, and yet the spending never slowed. And just like Britain in the 1940s, other nations began preparing for what comes next. The BRICS alliance, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, now trades outside the dollar. Central banks are buying gold again. The shift has already begun. Rome's silver died, Spain's silver died, Britain's gold died. The dollar was supposed to be immortal, but if the pattern is real, and it always is, then we're not watching the beginning of something new. We're watching the end of something old. Every empire believes it's different. Rome believed its legions would keep it eternal. Spain believed silver would make it untouchable. Britain believed the pound was too powerful to fail. And America believes the dollar is forever. But history is merciless. The math doesn't change. Every empire that built its power on borrowed money followed the same rhythm, the same 7 steps to oblivion. First comes dominance, unmatched power, unshakable confidence. Then expansion, more land, more wars, more promises. Next, deficits, the illusion that debt can fund greatness. Then debasement, the quiet betrayal of currency. After that comes inflation, loss of confidence, and finally, collapse. The names and centuries change. The pattern never does. Right now, the United States sits between stage 5 and 6, inflation and disbelief. The debt is beyond repayment, the spending never stops, and the world is beginning to whisper what no one dares say out loud. What if the dollar falls? It's not a theory, it's a countdown. If trust in the dollar breaks, everything built upon it, trade, savings, pensions, markets, begins to unravel. Because the dollar isn't just America's currency, it's the world's. 40% of global debt is denominated in it. Every crash, every crisis, every loan, all priced in dollars. When the denarius collapsed, Rome fractured into city-states. When Spain defaulted, Europe entered chaos. When the pound lost its throne, Britain faded into quiet irrelevance. But this time, the empire is global. If the dollar falls, there's nowhere to hide. Some predict a controlled decline, like Britain's slow descent after World War II. Others fear chaotic collapse, like Rome's sudden implosion into the Dark Ages. And then there's a third possibility, a reset, a new currency system, a digital dollar, a global coin, or something backed once again by gold. Whichever path we take, the pattern demands a price. You cannot print prosperity, you cannot borrow infinity, and you cannot debase your currency without debasing your empire. The story of collapsing empires isn't about past mistakes. It's about a mathematical truth humanity keeps ignoring. Because history doesn't just repeat, it collects unpaid debts, and the bill for the American empire is coming due.